Hey there, my name's Alex and these are my beehives. I've been a beekeeper now for 2.5 years. This will be my 3rd year of beekeeping and it has been such a big learning curve but also a very rewarding one. The feeling of harvesting your own honey at the end of the season is just the best thing ever, and I'm going to be documenting another year of beekeeping. I started beekeeping back in 2021. And on that first year, I really didn't have a clue what I was doing. I got stung loads, my bees swarmed, but despite this, I still managed to harvest 12 kilograms of honey, which I was so pleased about. Year 2 was slightly different. I knew more of what to expect, I managed the bees much better, and I harvested 68 kilograms of honey, which I sold in an honesty box outside my old house. Now things have changed quite a bit over the past few months. At the end of last year, I actually moved house from the southeast of England to the West Country in the city of Bristol. I managed to move my bees onto this little piece of land where some very kind people let me keep them, and this year the aim is to make even more honey. I'd really like to have a little market stall at one of the Bristol markets this year to sell my honey at, so that is the aim for this season. Anyway, the winter really has been dragging on a bit, but I've been trying to get on with a few important tasks. So let's rewind back to the beginning of this year so you can see what I've been up to. It's not cold out there, it's just really kind of, well, at the moment it's stopped raining, but it's been so wet. But quite mild conditions, which is kind of not great for the bees, because when the weather is warm, it means the bees are active. But at this time of year, there's not really many flowers for them to collect pollen and nectar from. So they end up going through the stores in their hive pretty quick, which means I need to keep an eye on their food levels. And today I'm going over for my weekly check to maybe top up the food and just check that everything's been okay. There's been a couple of storms recently, so I hope that the hives are still upright. I can actually see they're quite active today, and it's because it's so mild. It's like 13, 14 degrees in January. It's meant to be cold now, but it's so mild. I can see the bees down there. There's still a colony of bees. Now what's worrying is I don't know if the queen's okay. It's quite hard to tell. You can't open up the hive really at this time of year and have a look. But I can see that there are bees and they are eating away at the sugar. They still got probably another week or 2 of food on there, which is good. So I don't need to do anything with this one. On this hive I've got a 2.5 kilogram bag of fondant sugar, and you can see where they've eaten a hole through the sugar. I can also just lift up the back of the hive and I can feel that there's still quite a bit of weight there. So they have got, I think, enough food to last them through to spring in this hive. But then this is a small colony, and I have a feeling this one will need some more food. I'm also worried because there might be bees in the top here, so when I open it they've actually got enough food. This hive is so light. Like, they don't have much food stored in the hive, but they have enough of the sugar to eat at least. I made this little bench out of scrap wood, so I've got it to sit on and watch the bees. My bee watching bench. Look at this, this must be the first bit of sun we've had in weeks. Climate change, eh? I just hope that my bees survive another few months until the spring, and then we can get on with the beekeeping season, look after these hives. Hopefully they thrive and we get a big honey harvest, because this year we're aiming for more bees, more honey, more wax, more candles, more of everything. I just want more. That's the plan. Hey pigs. Until the beekeeping season really gets started in March and April, I'm going to be doing maybe a weekly or fortnightly check just to make sure they've got enough food to get them through the last of the winter. Over the next few weeks, I'm also going to attempt to make some beehive parts, because beehives and beekeeping equipment is quite expensive, like if you buy ready-made stuff. So I thought I'd go to the shop and buy some wood and use my limited woodwork skills to see if I can make some of the beekeeping equipment that I need for this year, just to try and save some money, and also to try and pass some time, because this part of the year is really uninspiring and there's not a great deal to do. Next time I see you will probably be in my back garden making some things out of wood. I have got so much wood in my room. I went to the wood shop today and bought a load of ply sheets, and they actually cut the pieces in the store. So most of these pieces of wood are cut to size already, or maybe half of them, which saves so much work because I don't really have many tools and space to do all the cutting of large sheets of ply. But the main job I have to do is measuring things accurately and then sticking the pieces of wood together to create the beehives. Beehives have to be really accurate. You can't just make any old sized box. They need to have specific dimensions so that the bees can live happily, and so that they don't create comb where you don't want them. There's something called a bee space, actually. It's between, I think, 4-5 millimeters and 8 or 9 millimeters. It's a specific size which you can't have any gaps in the hive bigger than that, otherwise the bees will fill it with comb, like beeswax, which makes the job as a beekeeper hard, because then the hive is like clogged up with comb where you don't want it. But if there's a space in the hive which is smaller than a bee space, smaller than that specific measurement, then the bees will fill it up with propolis, which can also be a problem, because if you have a very small gap in something, the bees then fill it with this sticky propolis stuff, which glues it shut basically. Anyway, on the next day where it's not pouring with rain outside and horrible weather, I'm going to go in the garden and do a bit of cutting, do a bit of gluing and screwing, so that we have some new bee boxes. Now, even though I'm not very good at making things out of wood, especially not accurate things, I realised that some parts of a beehive are pretty easy to make. Well, at least I think they are. Because this is a crown board. It's a lid which goes on the top of every single beehive. It has a couple of holes in for like feed holes. In the winter when you want to feed them, you can put food on top so the bees can come through. And then these holes are also used with these things. These are like bee escape mechanisms. So it's like a one-way system for bees. And when you're harvesting the honey, you put these in to get the bees out of the supers where the honey is. Anyway, these crown boards are very useful. You need them in every beehive. It's just a square of plywood and then 4 strips of strip wood around the outside. This is one that I bought, but this has been nailed on or stapled on. I got myself a staple gun thing, so shouldn't be too tricky to make. I think one of these would cost you £20-30. I should be able to make like 5 of them for the same price, so that's pretty cool. Well, that's just ridiculous. Within seconds of picking up my staple gun, I managed to break it. I think I loaded the staples in the wrong way and then a bit of metal bent out of place. So I've been in a very bad mood for the last 5 minutes, thinking that I need to go to the shop and get a new staple gun. But don't need to, because I got a screwdriver and a hammer. So we're gonna figure this out another way. Well, I managed to find enough nails to hit into this board. That's basically what we're going for. Still got to make a hole in the middle of this. But I'm also going to go to the shop and get another staple gun, because it'll be way quicker to just go than like hitting the nails in. What a disaster. Look what I got. A new staple gun. And this one, I managed to not break within the first 5 minutes. Ta-da! There we go, we have a crown board for a beehive. Now I'm gonna make another 4 of them. Well, the other day it started raining, and then I had to go back inside because all my tools were getting wet and all the wood was getting wet. So I thought I'd come back out here today. Everything was nice and dry until I got all my tools out here, and now it's raining. So annoying. I'm just gonna go for it and hope it doesn't rain too much. There we have about 150 quid's worth of beehive lids. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of them. And they're probably about £25 each if you buy them. And it didn't take long, it was quite easy to do. Good way to spend some time in the winter when you can't really do any beekeeping. Anyway, it's raining again, so I'm going to resume my beehive building on a slightly nicer day. I've started work on these nuke boxes, basically a small beehive, and this is a little bit more complex than the beehive roofs. These have to be pretty accurate, so I'm actually following a design. And I watched a YouTube video of someone building a beehive the other day, and what they did first was make a little rig for it, so these things hold the wood in place for when I can like screw them together. These slot into these gaps, and now I can screw it all together and it should be easy and held in place. Well, that just happened. Oh my god, no. Oh, it's freezing cold today, but I'm trying to get the beehives built. My housemate made me a mint tea. I now have 3 of these wooden boxes, and to demonstrate how they work, I've got these hive frames which go inside like so, and these are meant for 5 frames. As you can see here, there's 5 frames in there. You might be able to fit a 6th one. I've got to put a bottom on them, a lid on them, and also cut out a little entrance hole in the front for the bees to come in and out of. On the base of each beehive, I cut a hole, then stapled on some mesh. This would allow the hive to have fresh airflow coming up into the hive. I then attached the base to the box with some screws. We got the box, and then we got the lid, and then the roof. They're nearly done. I've just got to spend one more day painting them. Once they're painted, then they will be ready. One last thing to do before painting was cut a circular hole in the hive roof. This would end up being a feed hole, and when it wasn't being used for feeding, I could pop in one of these little plugs to stop the rain getting in. It's time to do some painting. I bought this paint here, Forget-Me-Not colour. How nice. It's kind of a nice light blue. This is outdoor paint, it's waterproof, which will protect the wood. I need to do 2 layers of these, 8 hours apart. So that's the hives painted. I now actually need to do the same thing all over again for the second coat. I've got paint everywhere. Cleaning isn't something that I've enjoyed much throughout my life, but as I get older, I definitely find more satisfaction in it than I used to. And my beekeeping equipment also needs cleaning. Diseases can build up in old comb, so by removing the old comb, thoroughly cleaning it off, you are reducing the chances of diseases getting into the hive. Also, as a beekeeper, you want to be able to go into your hive and lift out the frames easily. You don't want them to get jammed and stuck. And if you don't clean equipment, the propolis and wax can build up, and it can make just inspecting the hives pretty tricky. I've got a box behind me of things which need sorting. I'll show you what I need to do. So I've got a few old frames. This one, as you can see, the wax is gone. I need to clean out the last bits of wax from the edges, and then I can reuse this frame. I can put a new sheet of wax in. And then these ones have been used for a season or two, and the bees have actually decided for some reason to eat their way through and kind of destroy this frame. And that's not very good, because this bit becomes weak and it can end up breaking off like that. But this wax, I'm gonna melt it down and see if we get any good wax for candles out of that. It smells nice. But with this frame, we'll take out the wax, melt it down, and then clean the actual wood. Because look, that's all propolis and wax. That sticky stuff. You see how it's like actually really accumulated at the top there. And then also I've got these feeders. This is what I feed the sugar syrup in. Like in the autumn or the spring, if they need extra food, then I use these feeders for that. And as you can see in there, it's full of, oh gosh, dead ants, mold, and again, bits of propolis and wax. And all this equipment will be roughly cleaned off. Like, I think I'll try and scrub off most of the dirt, and then it will go into a boiler. This is a 30-litre boiler full of water, and also the magic ingredient is soda crystals. Now, most things in the kitchen you can clean with just washing up liquid and water. However, the propolis and wax is super like sticky and resistant to most washing up liquids, and you have to use something kind of stronger and more abrasive. I didn't really believe it at first, but beekeepers told me, like, if you want to clean your equipment, use soda crystals. And I was like, can't I just use washing up liquid? I tried washing up liquid, it did not work. Soda crystals are incredible. It dissolves the propolis, dissolves the wax, and you're left with very clean, nice equipment. So for a 30-litre boiler, I think I'm going to add 1 kilogram of soda crystals. This will create quite a mild solution, but this, as well as the boiling water, should do the trick. It's quite nice actually how beekeeping is. It's quite seasonal. It means that you have the winter to plan and prep and do things like this, clean equipment. Because if it was always like it is in the summer, which is pretty hectic, you would probably never have time for all the tasks like this. So the wires are trapped in here with these nails, so I need to actually remove this bit of wood. Smells quite nice actually. So you see that there, that is propolis, and after being soaked, it just comes out so easily. Would you look at that? It is so clean. There was so much gunk all around the frame here, and now it is so clean, perfect, ready to be used again. So after a few hours of cleaning, I have a box full of wax, which is really good stuff. I'm going to keep adding to that throughout the season and then turn this all into candles. The wooden frames and the feeders are just airing out. Once they're dry, I'll put them in a box and then into storage, ready for the season ahead of us. There's signs of spring. The bulbs that I planted in this garden a couple of months ago are starting to come up. We've got crocuses, daffodils, tulips, snowdrops, snowflakes, and some alliums. Things are slowly waking up. I feel good after this day of cleaning. It's one of those jobs which you know needs to be done, but you don't really want to do it. But it feels good now that it is done. Well, I have finally finished making my 3 little beehives. It took me way longer than I expected, and it would definitely have been cheaper just to buy some of these from online. But I'm trying to find a positive. I feel quite satisfied, and it's quite a good feeling having made these myself. Will I do it in the future if I can find a slightly cheaper way of making these? And also if I had maybe a workshop or a bit more space and a few more tools, then I might consider doing this again. Because it was quite a lot of hassle trying to build these in my bedroom and in the little back garden. But for now, they're finished. Inside of all these boxes are frames like this with foundation. That's just a sheet of beeswax, which then the bees will draw comb out from. The function of these little beehives are for when I split one of my larger colonies. I split one of those large ones into another colony, which I can put inside this little box. And then when they outgrow this little box, you can then put them in a bigger box. I think I might also use one of these boxes as a bait hive. You basically place a hive like this somewhere in hope that when someone else's bees swarm, they find your box, and then you can basically have a free colony of bees. So I might place one of these in the back garden and then place the other one near my bees where they are currently, just in hope that maybe I'll catch a swarm. It feels good that these are finally complete. We're getting stuck in all the Bristol traffic. It's a Sunday morning. It should be quiet, but there's quite a few people about, as you can see. And also, as you may be able to tell, the camera's moving. I'm not holding it. And that's because my housemate Tom is helping me film today, which is cool because I've never really had someone help film. Anyway, today, the plan is to get some bees. Now, I've been posting beekeeping videos on YouTube for the past 2 years, and somehow they have accumulated quite a few views, which has allowed me to connect and meet up with many other beekeepers. And just recently, I got an exciting offer from an Instagram follower who asked if I wanted another colony of bees. I actually lost one of my own colonies a few months ago, so this would make up the numbers again. Okay, I'm currently trying to park my van into a field, a very muddy field. So I'll keep my front 2 wheels on the hard stuff. Ooh. Oh. My wheels are sliding. I think that's as far as we're gonna get. Right, we arrived in a field in the middle of nowhere, and we're getting on our protective gear. Sometimes bees can be a bit angry. I always feel like a teddy bear when I put this on.
Do they never go for your hands?
They don't. Bees always go for like the face. It's really odd. They really they know where, I don't know, they can see a human face very well.
They have eyes.
Do bees have eyes?
Yeah, they have eyes.
They do have eyes.
You got your gloves on? Not giving me any gloves.
No, you're gonna be fine, mate.
Baby.
You stand back and you'll be okay. We've got some hive straps. We're gonna need these to strap the hive together so it doesn't fall apart. The bees are up there. Okay, let's go. Get some bees.
Don't walk down the front.
This side is where the entrances are.
Okay.
So they go in and out. So if you stand like back here, you'll be good. Sam made this beehive. It's so amazing.
If you have a look, you can see the bees in there. You can actually see the honey in there in the summer. Well, you can see a bit there, look. That's it. Really nice and tight, I think.
We don't want them escaping in the car. That is not what we want. I imagine it's going to be quite heavy.
It probably is going to be, and it's going to be top heavy as well, because all the honey and everything is all.
It's all at the top.
At the top. That's it.
Wow. And I think we're going to go in the side door. There you go.
Right, there we go.
Nicely behind my seat, Alex.
Yeah. We got the bees in the car. Goodbye.
Go left at the top, follow the road all the way down, and then you'll be back on the main road.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We've taken the bees hostage. They're in the back, blindfolded. Now we just have to bring them to their new home and let them free. Right, we've got the bees in position. We've now got 4 lots of bees. My hives that I have currently are national hives, which is like the size and shape of them. Like national is sort of what most people in the UK use for beehives. So everything is interchangeable. You can, lots of beekeepers can just use national size and then everything fits. However, this is a Warray hive, invented by a guy called Mr. Warray, I guess. But it's a very different sort of setup. It's a more natural way of beekeeping, where you don't actually have frames which you can take out. People often use these hives, they just leave them to it and they don't inspect them, they don't check them or manage them as much. But my aim is to get maximum honey harvest this year. So what I will do at some point this spring is take all the bees and all the comb out of here and try and transport them into a national hive. I don't know exactly how I'm going to do that, but it might involve using elastic bands to hold the frames, like hold the comb in place. But I will show that on video when I do it. But we're just having a look through these little windows. There's a lot of bees in there, and looks like there's a lot of honey as well. Here goes. And there we have a new addition. So it's currently the 11th of March. Things are meant to be turning into spring. There are signs. There's all this wild garlic around the beehives starting to grow, which smells really nice. And some of the trees are starting to flower. Quite a few of the spring bulbs are coming up. But it really hasn't felt like spring yet. But over the next few weeks, things should really start waking up, and so should the bees. One of the coolest things about this new place where I keep my bees is that I can park the van right next to them. There's no walking involved. It's great. I can be really lazy. Anyway, let's check up on the bees and see what's going on inside the hives. There we go. Where's my other glove? This is pretty nerve-wracking because this is the first time I've looked inside these hives since they were back in Sussex, back where I used to live. We're going to start off with this hive here. This is a small nuke box with 6 frames in, and it's from when I made a split last year. So on top here are just the feed blocks that I gave them. They've got a little bit of honey or stores in there, not much though. Yay, that's a good sign. There's a queen which is laying eggs. Eggs look like tiny grains of rice. So that's a good sign. That means there's a queen in here. Another frame of brood. Basically eggs, larvae and capped brood. Oh, there's the queen. It's got a yellow bit of pen on its head, although it's kind of rubbed off now. But that is a queen from not last year, but the year before. So this queen is like 2 years old now. Well, that's a great sign to see that the queen is there, laying plenty of eggs. And there's just another frame of brood. Oh, loads of eggs in that side. That's a really good sign because the colonies should be expanding pretty rapidly at the moment. As we go into spring, there needs to be more and more bees being born so that there's a big force of foraging bees that can go out and collect pollen and nectar. That frame has just got loads of pollen in it. So typically bees will build their nest up so that on the inside they've got all the baby bees and on the outside they've got all the food stores. I love seeing all the different colours of pollen. It looks so beautiful. And look, you can see some of the bees with pollen on their legs. Those are bees which have been out in the fields and been collecting pollen. And they'll be storing it into these cells. What I think I'm going to do with this hive is put them into a full-sized hive, because soon they will have used up all the space in this hive. They would have used up all the different frames, and they'll need more space to lay eggs, more space to store honey and pollen. And if I don't give them any more space, they are likely to then want to swarm, because swarming is what they do when they need more space. Luckily I have a hive which is kind of ready to go just over there. So what we're going to do is move this hive just out the way for a second. And we've got the new hive which we will put in the same position. And all the bees that were going into that hive will now fly back into that entrance. And then what I'm also going to do is rearrange these frames. So there's 6 frames there which I want to be in here. I'm going to take out these frames first. So now we can place the frames in the same order. There's the queen on that one. It's good to know that she is safe. And they're probably getting a bit confused, but they're actually really calm. Like, they're not all swarming around my head. They're staying pretty chilled. And what we'll do is we'll push all the frames up to one end. And there's a bit of mould inside here, but I don't think that should be a problem. The bees will sort that out themselves. The nest is there, and they will slowly build that out and then end up hopefully using the whole hive. That's the plan. I'll give them back some of their sugar in case they need it. There we go, that is the first hive looked at. Things are looking okay. There's a queen in there, which is the main thing, and the queen is laying eggs. There's brood in all stages. There's pollen coming in. I can actually see at the entrance now, plenty of bees bringing in fresh pollen. So I think things are under control with this hive. Right then, let's look at hive number 2. This one I'm kind of worried about. There's just not as much activity going on at the entrance. And it looks like there's not many bees in here. So yeah, this isn't looking great, to be honest. Oh my goodness, there's so few bees. This is a full-sized hive. This was full of bees last year, and they're only on maybe 3 frames. So this isn't looking too good. Nothing so far. Don't know what's going on here. There's just no sign of a queen. There's no eggs, no larvae, no brood. Oh, there's the queen. What? I just found her. But she's not laying any eggs. Like, if you look in the cells, there's nothing. Nothing at all. Which is kind of strange, but I guess that does happen. There's definitely no eggs. I wonder when the queen stopped laying eggs, because there's definitely none in here. See that? Nothing. Just bees. Not a huge amount of them. Well, that's not good. Basically means that this colony is going to slowly die out if I don't do anything. I guess what I need to do is I either need to get a new queen and put it in here, but I have a feeling it's kind of too early on in the year to do that. I don't know if there'll be people selling queens at this time of year. Or I join this colony with that one, because that one's got a queen. So if we join them together, then it should work. Unfortunately, if I want to join 2 hives together, I have to kill the queen that I don't want, which is the one in this hive. I don't want to do it, but I have to. Oh gosh, oopsie, sorry. I currently can't find the queen anywhere. There she is. There's the queen. And she isn't laying any eggs when she should be. So unfortunately, she is going to die. Sounds brutal. I'm a good person, I promise. I'm doing it for the good of the bees. Just like that, she's gone. And now we need to join this with either that one or that one, if that one's got a queen. Hopefully we're not in the same position on that hive. Well, that's not so good news. We'll see what's going on in the final hive. Hopefully things are looking better. Righty ho then. Fingers crossed things are looking better in here. It's looking slightly better. Still not amazing though. The colony doesn't look that full. But if I compare it to how it looked this time last year, I'm pretty sure it was like the whole thing was full. It might be something to do with the weather we've been having. But yeah, I don't know. I don't really know. Let's have a look, see what we can find. They got some honey stored around here, which is good. More honey stored there. The question is there a queen which is laying eggs? If there isn't, then I'm going to be truly confused. No sign yet. Oh, I just seen the queen. Oh, there's the queen. She's looking good. Oh, yay! And there is brood in here. Brood and eggs. That's good. That's very good. I was getting really worried then. She's got a really bright pink spot. Well, that's a massive relief. She's laying eggs, but not... Doesn't seem like there's loads. Like the brood area is pretty small. You can see under these bees, if I move them out of the way, that is the brood, that's the capped brood, and then in these other cells that you can't see, there's larvae and eggs. So at some point in the next, I guess, week, this will all look like that there. Inside these hexagonal cells are where so many things take place. Not only are they used for storing honey and pollen, which are the food sources for the bees, it's also where eggs are laid and where new bees are born. Once a queen bee lays a worker bee egg, it will hatch after 3 days into a larva, where it will be fed by other bees. 9 days after the egg was laid, the bees will cap the cell over with wax, and on the 21st day after the egg was laid, the bee will emerge from the cell. A queen bee can lay thousands of eggs a day, so you can see how a colony can grow very quickly over a short period of time. Look, there's a bee that is being born. You can see it trying to get out of the cell that it's been living in for the past 20 days or so. And you can probably see inside those darker cells the larvae. Oh look, the baby bee is slowly making her way out. Yeah! That bee has just seen daylight for the first time of its life. That was amazing. We just witnessed something magical. And that same thing will happen to all of these other brown cells over the next few days. Now, do I join that colony with this one or join it with that one? I think this one probably needs more of a hand. And they're doing a good job at storing plenty of nectar away. Look at that. That frame is filling up nicely. You can always feel from the weight of the frames how much food they've got in there. But this one's a lot heavier. And the other frames are pretty much the same. So that's doing okay. Well, interesting stuff. Now, to join the two hives together, I need to probably grab some newspaper. Unless I have some in my car. Now, I couldn't find any newspaper, but I have some loo roll. Basically, the aim is to create a thin barrier between the two hives that you're joining together, just so the smell doesn't instantly like annoy the other bees, I guess. You want them to meet each other slowly, so you basically put something thin like this or newspaper, make a few holes, the smells they can get used to the smells and slowly chew through, and then they meet in the middle, and then hopefully they don't fight. So now we're going to lay this tissue paper over. This is not how you're really meant to do it, but I don't know what else to use. It's a good job it's not windy today, otherwise this would be impossible. And this won't make a huge difference, but it would just mean that all the bees that were in that colony will be able to join forces with these, so they'll work together on foraging, and it should make the colony just that little bit stronger going into the spring. So now we have the queen right colony at the bottom. We've got the queenless colony at the top. They should eat their way through and then join together. And if you're wondering what will happen to all the bees that return back to here, because this colony and this colony are so close, the bees will just disperse themselves between the two. They won't get too lost. Well, there we go. First check up on the bees this season. Little bit of bad news, little bit of good news. We have a couple of queen bees which are laying. I've hopefully sorted out that problem. The colony which had the queen which wasn't laying no longer has that queen. I'm a murderer, I killed it. But I joined it with a colony that does have a queen. So they can now hopefully do their thing, integrate and become a bigger and stronger colony. This hive also has a queen. The warre hive, the tall hive over there, I'm going to leave that one to it for a few more weeks still. We got a new beehive. Look at this. Beautiful. Oh, it smells good as well. The beehives that you see, the wooden boxes that beekeepers have, they're only a very recent invention in the grand scheme of things. People have been keeping bees for about 10,000 years. Like actually looking after them for honey production. But bees have been around for a lot longer than that. I think bees have been knocking around for about 100 million years. So if you look at this timeline that I've put together, you can see that humans haven't been keeping bees that long. But I guess that before humans were keeping bees in boxes, we were still harvesting honey, most likely by going into a wild nest and sticking our hands in and grabbing out some of the honeycomb. I imagine getting stung quite a lot in the process, but humans would have done it like bears do it now. But in a similar way that humans decided to start cultivating plants and do farming, they also realized that they could probably get their hands on honey easier if they kept bees in a more like farm animal way. Bee farming practices have come a long way in recent times. People have designed and created many different types of beehives, and they've actually cultivated different strains of bees so that they have desirable traits, like that they don't sting you as much, and they produce more honey, and they're resilient to diseases. Now, I've been doing some history research recently, and I guess a big leap forward was made in around the 1800s, when a guy called Mr. Langstroth, he invented a type of beehive which included movable frames. So you could actually take the frames out and move them. Now this is the type of beehive that I have been using for the past 3 years, and what pretty much every beekeeper uses in the world these days, because it's so practical. It's made up of a box with 10 or so wooden frames in, and the comb is kept within the parameters of the wooden frame, meaning that you can pull out the whole comb. This opens up many possibilities for the beekeeper. It's easier to inspect the bees during swarm season and check for queen cells being built. It allows the beekeeper to take out and move the frames around, combine with other hives, and make swarm control manipulations. And when it comes to honey harvesting, the honey frames can simply be removed and placed into a spinning extractor. The movable frame hive has also allowed beekeepers to harvest crazy amounts of honey. I read a book by a guy called Ormond. In fact, I might have it on my bookshelf over here. There we go. This is a proper old beekeeping book. Mastering the Art of Beekeeping by Ormond and Harry Aby. I'm not sure if that's exactly how you say it. Anyway, this is a really interesting book about a guy who's trying to harvest the record amount of honey from a beehive. In 1974, Ormond managed to harvest 404 pounds of honey. That's 183 kilograms of honey from one beehive. I think other people may have beaten that amount since, but just to put things into perspective, when I harvested honey from my bees last year, I thought I had a really good season. From one beehive, I harvested about 40 kilograms. This guy Ormond got over 180 kilograms. Look, there's a picture on the back of one of his beehives. Those are all honey boxes on top. It must have been so unstable. Now there's a few different varieties of hive, all based on the Langstroth movable hive design. There's hives with different dimensions, some which are slightly bigger than others, some which are slightly wider than others. But the type of beehive that I use, and what I think most people in the UK use, is called a national hive. Now the national size is, I think, 460mm by 460mm. That's like the dimensions of the boxes that you use. So when I go and buy new equipment, I always get national size stuff. Does that make sense? It's sort of just interchangeable, compatible. Now just recently I very kindly got given some new beekeeping equipment by a company called National Bee Supplies. They're based down in Devon, which is only like an hour or two from here. But they actually make all their equipment down in Devon here in the UK, which is pretty cool. And I'm going to unbox some of the equipment now, and we're going to build and put together a beehive. And I hope that by putting together a beehive from the floor up, you can get an idea of the different parts of a beehive and how they fit together. Right, let's get this box. Now this is a large box of beekeeping stuff. I'll explain all the different parts in a second. Like this might look a bit confusing currently, but all will be explained soon. Box. And some of it hasn't even been put together yet, so I'm gonna have to do some woodwork. I say woodwork, not proper woodwork. Basically flat pack style woodwork. This here and these bits of wood are the roof of the beehive. Now when you buy beehives, you can buy them ready-made, like ready assembled, or flat packed. They're obviously cheaper if you buy them flat packed. And if you like to do a bit of woodwork and doing things yourself, then you might as well get them flat packed. And if you're good at woodwork, you don't even need to buy beehives at all. You can buy the wood and build the beehives yourself. I made some of these small beehives, and I'm sure they will work. Like, they'll work just fine. They're just not perfect. They're not as well made with nice wood, and they just don't fit together as nice as ones made professionally, like these. And when you buy beehives, you also normally get nails that come with them. So I've got to just nail in this together. I've got two different sizes of hammer. So I've nailed together this square box. I've got to put these supporting pieces in now. So there's these little air vents here and here, and they line up with the air vents in the roof. It goes like that. Fits nice and snug in there. Now I've just got to hit some more nails in to secure the metal in place. After all that banging, we have a hive roof. You can see the ventilation slots there and there. And these have beautiful joins at the sides. So they're really, real nice. Right, let's put together the beehive, starting with the floor. This is what the beehive sits on. This goes on the hive stand, and then the rest of the hive is built up on top. Now, this is an open mesh hive floor, which basically means that there's a mesh here which allows air to go through and also allows things to drop from the hive out. This one has a tray. Now, this isn't kept under the hive at all times, but it comes in handy. Because the hive floor is open, it means that you can use this tray to track what's going on inside the hive. For example, if you want to check how many mites are in the hive, you slide this tray under. In some hives, it's a piece of wood, but it can basically be anything that goes underneath the open mesh floor. You leave that tray under there for about a week. Mites will fall off the bees and onto the tray, and then you can count how many mites are on the tray. I've done this a few times throughout the winter when I want to know how many mites there are and whether I need to then treat the bees to get rid of the mites. Most of the time this tray isn't in the hive, and without that tray it means that air can pass through really easily, and airflow is really important in a beehive because you don't want it to be damp. The bees need it to be dry so that they can actually dry out the honey when they're collecting it. You've got this extra bit of wood here. This is the entrance block. Now, if you placed it in this way, it would mean that bees can't get in and out at all. But if you place it this way, you can see now there's a little entrance. Bees can go in and out of there. As well as that, you can take it out completely, and then the bees have the whole thing to enter. It will make more sense when I put the brood box on top. So this is the brood box, and here you can see the entrance is that big, and then you put the entrance block in like this, and it's smaller. So at different times of year you can make the entrance larger or smaller. You can also put bits of foam into the entrance to then make the entrance smaller. Basically, last summer when the bees were really active collecting loads of nectar, I didn't have this block in at all because I wanted maximum amount of bees to be able to come in and out. I didn't want them queuing up to get in. However, in the autumn time, when there's lots of wasps about which are trying to enter the hive and steal the honey, you want to make that entrance smaller. So I put in the entrance block like this. And the bees can guard their hive a lot easier when you've got the entrance smaller. So the entrance block, although it is just a piece of wood, it does have an important purpose at controlling the size of the entrance. You can also get all sorts of different gadgets which go onto the entrance to stop things like mice getting in, and also special wasp entrances, so wasps are less likely to enter. So yeah, this is the brood box. It's called the brood box because this is where the brood are. The brood consists of the baby bees, the eggs, and the queen. Now inside here fit, I think, 11 frames or 12 frames, and frames look like this. I'll quickly show you how a beehive frame can be put together. Now again, it's flat packed, so everything is cut to size, ready to just put together. So the different pieces include a top bar. This is the top section that you hold onto, and then the side bars, and then the bottom sort of supports, 2 of them. I've got some frame nails, and then the all-important foundation. Now this is basically beeswax. As you can see, a sheet of beeswax, the perfect size that fits into the frame. These are wired. Now you can get unwired, but I believe that the wired stuff is just slightly stronger. It's got these wires that go the whole way through it. And this goes inside the frame and acts as sort of a starter for the bees to work on. You're basically making life for the bees a little bit easier by giving them this whole piece of wax to start with. You take your top bar, you break off the little wooden section, you grab the 2 side pieces, and you got to make sure that the little notch is on the inside, because that's where the wax will slide into. These slot into the top bar. Sometimes it takes a little bit of jiggling. You can give it a knock with the hammer just to make it slide into place. And then the two bottom pieces complete the frame. These also just slide in really neatly. Now, although it does kind of hold together quite nicely as it is, it's still a good idea to put nails in the whole way around. Once the frame is nailed in place, you can then grab your piece of wax and slide it in. And then once it's nearly at the bottom, you bend these bits of metal at the bottom over, slide it the whole way down, and then this first bit of wood that I took out, this goes back into place. And then you nail the nails in. These are the hardest nails to get in because you have to kind of hold the frame at an angle and hammer them in diagonally. And there we go. Simple as that. We've got a frame to put in the beehive. Oh, I just love the smell of wood and wax put together. It just smells so good. So I have a selection of frames that I have been making. Oh gosh, no. Oh dear. These frames go inside like this. So in this hive we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 frames. You could fit one more frame in here. However, from my previous experience, it's actually better to put one of these in. This is a dummy board. It's basically the same size as a frame, but it's not a frame. It's just sort of a gap filler. So this goes in here. By having a bit of space here, allows you to take the frames out a bit easier. If you tried to cram another frame in there, it would be really hard to get out. And one of my hives currently, I have 12 frames and it's just really hard to remove. So it's good to have a dummy board instead. Makes taking and moving the frames around easier. Now some beekeepers have the brood box this way around and some people have it that way around. There's two different ways. Frames are facing the direction of the entrance and then this way they're going against the entrance. I've had beekeepers tell me to do it like this and then some beekeepers telling me I should do it like that. I don't really know. I currently have my hives like this. If you have any suggestions or ideas about this, let me know in the comments. It would be interesting to know. Now if you look closely you can see that each frame has a flat side and a pointy side. And this helps space the frames the correct distance apart. If these gaps here were too big, then the bees would build like wild comb in between, which wouldn't be good. And if these gaps were too small, the bees would propolize it together. But everything is sort of set the correct distance apart. Now moving on, we have an interesting piece of equipment called a queen excluder. Now the gaps in this mesh here are large enough for worker bees to get through. They can easily pass through this and go from this box above into the other boxes. However, the queen can't get through that. The queen is too big, the queen is slightly larger. I have heard instances where small queens have managed to get through, but I've never had this happen. Basically, you want to keep the queen in this bottom box. If the queen gets above this box into the honey boxes, the queen may lay eggs within the honey. So this queen excluder goes on top of the hive. So the queen now can't pass through and we can put on the honey boxes. So I've got a couple of these honey boxes. They're called supers actually. Super, I learnt, comes from the word superfluous, which means extra. So these supers hold the surplus honey. You might be wondering why these are plastic wrapped. Now there's a good reason for this. These honey boxes here I used last season. They were on the beehives, they filled it with honey, I then extracted the honey, and then when I put them into storage, I froze them, so put them in the freezer for like a day. This kills off wax moth, and then to stop more wax moth getting in, I then wrap it all with plastic. What is a wax moth? It's a little moth which whilst it's in its larval stage can destroy the wax frames. Now I didn't do this last winter, and as you can see here, my frames got a little bit eaten, which was not a nice sight. The bees go to all this effort to build the frames up, and then for them to be eaten by the wax moth, it's not ideal at all. So my current way of getting around this is to freeze the frames in a chest freezer and then wrap them up. So here we go. Gosh, I wish you could smell the room right now. It smells so strong of honey. It's great. Oh, it's gorgeous. And there's no signs of wax moth. These are just beautiful creations. They draw out the comb and store all the honey in here. You can actually see some leftover pollen in there too. But basically what I wanted to show you was that these supers go on top of the queen excluder like that, and then in this box here is where the bees will store the honey. Now inside a honeybee's nest, naturally they will always have the brood at the bottom and then the honey at the top. So they naturally live down there, and then throughout the summer when they're finding more and more honey, they build up and then they keep all the excess honey in here until the end of the year, where I come along like a bear and take some of it. Now I've been wondering why the super is smaller than the brood box for a while. It didn't make much sense to me, because I thought, well, surely you want the honey boxes to be as big as possible so you can have as much honey in there as possible. But I did realise last year that when one of these boxes is full of honey, it weighs so much. Like if this was much bigger and you had loads of these boxes to lift full of honey, it would probably break your back. And I believe that is the reason for honey supers being in general smaller than brood boxes. But to be honest, I feel quite young and healthy right now. So this year I might actually try putting brood boxes as the supers. So if the bees fill them up, they will be quite a lot heavier than these smaller boxes. So I might experiment with that this year. Now you can put on as many of these as you like. Now last year I had, I think, 4 of these honey supers on top of each other, and it's such a nice sight, and it feels great to be adding more and more of these boxes, and the beehive gets taller and taller throughout the summer, and you're just anticipating the honey harvest. Now if you watched one of my previous beekeeping episodes, you would have seen me trying to build some beekeeping equipment, and I did manage to build a load of these. This is called a crown board. It's basically a lid of a beehive with 2 holes in. This is like the top of the beehive. This goes on top like this, like so. Now the holes here in the top are for a couple of different things. Firstly, they are feed holes. You can put food on top of these. The bees can come through from the hive and feed. You can also put a little mechanism called a bee escape inside the hole, which is basically a one-way system for bees. The bees can go through one way, can't go back the other, and they are used when you're trying to get the honey off. So you actually put this board with the bee escapes under here, and then you close it off. Then the bees go down out of this box through the one-way system. They can't get back up, so then this box ends up empty of bees. Quite clever. That's what I did last year. It doesn't work 100% effectively. You still end up with quite a lot of bees in the top, but it does help get some of the bees out. And then on top of the lid, we can put the final thing, which is the roof. This is a fresh, brand new roof, which I made just now. And that goes on top, like that. Ta-da! We just put together a beehive. There's one thing missing. Some bees. And I'm very excited to announce that in a few weeks' time, I'm actually going to get some bees that I can put inside this box. I've been speaking with a bee farmer in Wales, and I'm going to drive up to his place in a few weeks' time and collect a colony of honeybees. Not just any old colony of honeybees. There's going to be a very special queen bee in there as well. It's going to hopefully bring some really good genetics into my beekeeping operation. So stay tuned for that beekeeping video, which will be coming soon. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you learned a bit about how a beehive is made. Thanks so much to National Bee Supplies for sorting me out with some wonderful new equipment, which I'm very excited to use, and I'm sure the bees will be happy to live in there too. See you soon, everyone. there's a couple of interesting things which I'm going to do. One of those things is transferring bees from one hive into another. I was given this Warre hive a few months ago. It's the tall one. That tall one that looks very different from those two. That's a Warre hive, and then my other two are called national hives. It's basically just the sizing of the hives, and I want to run all my beehives on the same equipment just to make things easier for me as a beekeeper. So my plan is to go inside that Warre hive, cut the comb out, and try and transfer it all into a national sized hive. It should all become a lot clearer when you see the whole process happening. Now the other thing which I want to do, it's going to be a bit of an experiment, but I want to try requeening one of my hives. Now the two colonies that I got through the winter that survived, they didn't seem as strong as my colonies did last year at this same time. Now that might be a little bit down to the weather. This spring has been nothing like last spring, but it could also be down to the genetics and the quality of the queen. Now, the queen that I have in the furthest away hive has a yellow dot on its head, which means it's about 2 years old now, which is quite old for a queen. And over time, the quality of a queen goes down. So I'm going to try something a bit new. I'm going to requeen the colony. That basically involves getting rid of the old queen and then introducing a new queen. And I've managed to source some really good quality queens. You might be wondering, what makes a good quality queen? Well, there's people out there who breed queens and they're picking the best genetics that they can find. The things that the queen bee breeders are looking for are bees that don't sting, like non-aggressive bees, bees that produce lots of honey, bees that are resistant to diseases. And the bee farmers are trying to capture those traits all into one queen bee. And then the queen bee obviously is the bee which lays all the eggs, so it passes on all those genetics to all the other bees. So we are going to try requeening one of my colonies with a fresh new 2024 bred queen bee. Now loads of people have been asking me what bee suit I have. Now I'm really proud of this bee suit. It did cost me about 160 quid, which is quite expensive, but it is so comfortable. And it's got like this nice material that lets air in. So in the summer, I can just take my t-shirt off and trousers off, and then the air flows through and it's still nice and yeah, you don't get too hot. Anyway, this suit is the Swainty Breeze. That's all it says on here. That is my beekeeping suit. I've got it in a large size. I'm 6'3", and it fits me perfect. So recently I got this cool little tool, and this sticks to the side of the van, and then you can put the smoke in. How cool is that? Because basically when I leave my bees, the smoker is still hot and burning, and when I drive home I don't want it in the back of the car because it smokes up. I don't know if that magnet will hold on the whole way home. I guess we have to just try it and see. So this is the hive which has the old queen in that I think we're going to replace. First I want to just have a little inspection of the hive and see how it's doing, because it might be not as bad as it was. They've got this feeder here because I've been feeding them to try and help them out. Like I said, they were really slow to get going this spring, and I was trying to just help them wherever I could. They have expanded a lot larger. See, when I first moved them into this hive from the other box, they were sort of just this section, and they've expanded into all those frames. And that's happened in the last few weeks. Give them a few puffs of smoke to make them all go down. I'm gonna just look through the hive now and see what it's looking like. So that's the edge of the colony, so they haven't done anything. They've still got quite a lot of space in here to do stuff. They're storing food in this frame because that's got some weight to it. There's nectar and I guess the sugar syrup that I've been feeding them in there. No brood in that frame. I think I can see eggs in the bottom of the cells on this frame. So that frame is full of brood. You can see all the capped over brood in there, that's good. So the queen is laying a lot more than she was. I think I read somewhere that if a frame like this is all capped over with brood, that will hatch into 3 frames of bees. So when they actually hatch out, they'll actually cover 3 frames. So there's the queen bee, which I'm going to replace. Now the process of requeening a hive is a little bit brutal. It will involve having to kill this queen because you can't have 2 queens. If you introduced a new queen in here, they would kill it. And although it's a little bit sad that I'm going to get rid of this queen that has been with me for a couple of years, it's for the greater good.
How can this be for the greater good? Shut it!
I'm sure with a new queen that was born and bred this year, it will make this colony super strong and it'll have all the good genetics which has been bred for. And she's gone. I feel like a terrible human, but this colony is going to get a new queen soon. And it's going to be a really good quality queen, hopefully. Trust me, bees, things will get better. So now that this colony doesn't have a queen, they're going to try making one from the eggs that are in here, because they can raise a new queen from the eggs that that queen has laid. But of course we don't want those genetics, we want the new queen. So what we'll do is we'll come back to this hive in 8 days time and we will find all the queen cells that these bees have made and remove them. Once they're removed, we can then add the new queen. So that's all we have to do with this hive. That's that done. So that is the first step taken with requeening this hive. The old queen is gone, ready for a new queen. Oh wow, it's looking pretty good. There's a raven over there, sounds like a raven. Croaking. Oh, that's a nice sight. There's all brood that will hatch out soon, so that 1 frame will turn into 3 frames of bees. And it's the same the other side. Sometimes the bees build this drone comb, which you don't really want there. I'm just going to remove that just to make things easier. So we found the queen in this hive. Now I kind of want to try maybe taking a split from this hive. Got this nifty little device here where I can catch queens in and then I can hold them, because the queen you want to keep safe at all times, and you can just catch the queen in that, leave it to one side whilst you manage the rest of the colony. Okay, this hive's looking pretty good. Most of these frames are covered in brood which will hatch out soon. The queen seems to be laying pretty well. I'm going to take a quick break and then we're going to get stuck in with this Warre hive and transfer it into a normal hive. Currently behind the hives there's such a nice display of wild garlic flowers. I actually saw a honeybee on them very briefly the other day, but I'm not sure. Yeah, I see another honeybee over there now. So they're obviously of use to the honeybees, these wild garlic flowers, but not all flowers are. Like lots of flowers, they're not the right shape for the honeybee to get their tongue into. But over the past couple of weeks I've been going for a few walks on the nicer weather days and I've been seeing so many flowers about, which is a really nice sign, because whenever I see flowers I think of my bees. Dandelion City apple. All of that is food for bees. My dad's tortoise also eats dandelions. You enjoying that nectar? The bluebells are out as well. Beautiful. Honestly, I love a spring countryside walk. Everything is just coming to life. I'm in a field full of flowers. Look at the views. I am so lucky to keep my bees in this part of the country. Wow. I'm gonna finish off eating my apple. I went to a bluebell wood recently. Now in England we get such incredible displays of bluebells. I think we're lucky enough to have like the best bluebell population in the world, and we have quite a few of these amazing carpeted bluebell woods in late April. I was seeing loads of honeybees feeding on them, Interestingly, the honeybee, I don't think its tongue isn't long enough to go into the bluebell flower the normal way. So they actually get round the back of the flower and then stick their tongue into like a little gap round the back. I was watching these bees for hours, and it was quite fascinating how they didn't use the usual technique of going into the flower. Yeah, they found a back entrance where they can suck the nectar out. The hawthorn trees are now flowering. In fact, lots of trees are. This tree up here, this sycamore, they have these dangling flowers. Basically every single plant, actually not every plant, because ferns, I believe, have spores, not flowers. But most plants have flowers, and those flowers need to be pollinated. Some plants, like grasses, like wheat and barley, I think are pretty much just wind pollinated. They're not much used to a honeybee, and sweet corn as well. But flowers which sort of look beautiful, they're there with nice petals and bright colours to attract the pollinators in, so they can get a helping hand with pollinating. And at the same time, they look really nice to us too. I can actually see quite a lot of honeybees on this wild garlic. I just hope the honey doesn't taste of garlic. That wouldn't be good. Anyway, that's my little sit down break over. I'm gonna get inside the warre hive and see if we can't transfer all the bees and the comb into a national sized hive. And then I can manage all my colonies with the same equipment, and it should be a little bit easier. So what we've got here is the original hive with all the bees in. We've got a new hive here, which these bees will eventually go into. And then I've made up a few of these frames with elastic bands. These are here so I can cut out some of the comb, and then hopefully it will stay within this elastic bands. It's just a temporary solution to hold things in place. I've then got a warre hive tool, a bucket to put any honey in, and then another bucket which is just any excess wax. Now, an important thing to remember is that these bees know that exact area as their entrance. So the first thing we're going to do is move this hive over here, and then all the flying bees will return to the new hive that I put in that one's place. And now we can put this stand here. Now these bees will currently be a bit confused. Now you can see they're all going over there. Now we've got to get inside this box. It's a bit of a crazy situation we got here. Now the queen is going to be in here somewhere, and we've got to be careful we don't damage her. Whoa, look at that, that's a block of honey, and we're going to put that in our clean bucket where hopefully no bees are going to get in. That frame we managed to get out without breaking it off the wood. There's so many bees in the air right now. Now we are reaching the brood nest. So on this frame you can see honey here, but then there's the start of the brood nest. The brood nest will expand down, and that is, like, we want to keep this because these bees will hatch out. So I'm going to try and fix this into one of my frames. This is also good because they have like a load of food stored, so they've got everything they need: food, new bees being born, some pollen, but we're going to somehow try and get that in there. There we go, a national size frame with the comb in. This is just temporary though. I'm going to try and slowly, over the course of a few weeks, move this frame to the outside of the hive so they stop using this, and then I can get rid of this. And this frame can go in here. And now we've got to do the same thing with all of this. So this isn't such a great sign. It's pretty much mostly drone brood, which could mean that the queen isn't doing her job properly. Oh no, that's looking a lot better. This is all worker brood. There's currently bees everywhere. You wouldn't want to sit down on this bench. We've nearly got all the frames we need into that box. Exciting news, the people who actually allow me to keep the bees on this farm, they also keep bees down there, and they say they have a swarm, so I'm going to bring the camera along and try and catch it. So I've managed to get as much of the brood frames into the new hive, and now I'm just going to leave it for a bit. We're going to go down, check out the swarm, and then we'll come back later and see if where the bees are at. Hopefully the queen is in the box. That's quite important. If the queen isn't in the box, then it might not work. That is what you need when you're tired, hot and sweaty in a bee suit. That was so good. Let's try and catch a swarm. It is pretty much prime swarming conditions because we've had a load of wet weather recently, which means the bees haven't really wanted to leave the hive. And then we've had this really nice weather today and the bees are just ready to swarm. So this is what a bee swarm looks like. They're just hanging from the tree. And they would have probably come out of one of those two hives there. I reckon, yeah, we'll leave it and see. So we just caught the swarm out of the tree, put it into a new box. Hopefully they'll stay there and call it a home. I hear that sometimes they don't want to stay in the box, so they'll just fly off and find their own home, but we've done the best we can. Like, they hopefully will be happy there. In the meantime, this hive here has calmed down. I'm hoping that the bees are happy with their new home. Well, that is the end of a hectic few hours of beekeeping, trying to catch a swarm, trying to move one hive into another hive. Bees flying everywhere. Luckily, no stings though. We have a bucket full of honey, which I'm going to process when I get home. And next week, I will finish off the requeening process on my hive. So here's the bucket of honey which I managed to pull off that warrior hive. I'm going to process it now. I've got a chopping board and I've got this, which is a cut comb cutter. It's like a little knife, I guess, like an oblong knife which you push into the comb. You get your cut comb box, pop it in and then push the comb out into the little box. So this is as raw as it gets. Well, that is actually a really nice product because you can see the side view of the comb as well. $20 boxes of honey! I'm gonna give most of this back to the person who gave me the hive. I think that's only fair. And the rest of it I will eat! Just got a delivery in the post. Special delivery guaranteed by 1 PM. If you remember, a week ago, we dequeened the colony. Live bees in transit. Anyway, in here, wow, there's a queen bee. There's not just a queen bee, but there's 9 bees in there. One is the queen. There's a green dot on its head. And those other bees look after the queen. There's some fondant sugar in this side. That's what that white stuff is. Look how quick these ones are moving about. So there we have 2 mated queens. One of them I'm going to put into a split. So I'm going to make a split from one of the other hives and create a brand new colony with a new mated queen. and the other one is going to go into the dequeened colony. And we're going to do all of that over the next couple of days. For now though, they're going to sit in my shaded bedroom out of the sun, and I'm going to give them a little dab of water. And they're going to sit on my desk and chill there for a bit. Stay tuned to see how the introduction to the colonies goes. So these are F1 mated buckfast bees. Buckfast is the strain. F1 means that it is like the first generation, I think. If you bred from these bees, then you'd have F2s. I think that's correct. I don't know much about breeding. The main important thing though is that these have good genetics and they are mated queens. One of the queens is to requeen the hive, which we took the queen out of last week. I'm actually going to do that tomorrow. Tomorrow will be day 8 of the process, which means they won't be able to raise any more queens from the larvae or eggs that they had. The other queen we're going to use today to make up a nuke. Now what we're going to do is we're going to split this hive into 2, or actually 3, because we're going to take 2 splits from this. The process might seem a little complicated, but I will try and make it as visible and clear as possible. First thing we're going to do though is just check through the colony, do a general inspection and see what state the hive are in. I believe they're pretty strong now though, they're building up nicely. I've been going back and forth between using my leather gloves, which I don't ever get stung through, and these nitrile gloves. They don't offer much protection, but they just allow you to be a lot more precise with the frames and your fingers, and you squish less bees, which is good. Ideally I wouldn't use gloves at all, but I might end up with swollen hands. I think the bees don't sting through these so much because it doesn't feel like skin of an animal. So they're like, why would I bother stinging that? Let's get in the hive. Oh, I should probably light my smoker as well. So unorganized. Oh, hey, we're finally ready. Wow. Yeah, they've built up so much larger than they were even a week ago. Wow, that's every frame in this hive full. Do you remember like a month ago there was maybe 4 frames, 5 frames? Now there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. Right, we're gonna have just a look through the whole colony and see what we're dealing with. There's lots more male bees now. Oh wow. So this frame is now full of nectar or food that I've given them, which is a really good sign. It's actually tricky where I am in the shade. Sometimes I need to bring it over to the light so I can see. I'm hoping I don't see any swarm cells, because this frame here is full of brood, full of eggs. Wow, it looks so good. It's kind of tricky to show you exactly what's going on, but in there are thousands of baby bees. I think on one frame there's like 2,000 cells. So there could be nearly 2,000 bees being about to be born in there. This colony is going to be really quite large in a few weeks' time, and they could potentially swarm if I'm not careful. I'm kind of half expecting to see swarm cells in here, because it's the right time of year for it. They built some of this comb on the edge there, which I'm just going to take off. That's drone brood. They'll turn that into male bees. No sign of the queen yet, but that's all right. I don't think they've swarmed yet, because a week ago there weren't any swarm cells. And the bees are pretty calm actually, quite easy to deal with. There's another frame just full of brood. Wow. I'm seeing a few of these play cups. They're basically queen cells, but they haven't drawn them out yet. They're kind of small. Because if one frame of brood can turn into 3 frames of bees, that's like 3, 6, 9. Gosh, they're going to be huge. And once again, a whole frame. This is all capped over brood. I shook some of the bees off so you can see. That'll all hatch out in the next week or so. Yeah, it's like 21 days from worker bee being born till it emerges and hatches. Basically all of that is looking real good. Right, I want to find the queen and I want to double check there's definitely no queen cells in here. Oh, I see the queen. Why is she always on the last frame I look at? I think she's just constantly running away. We're gonna catch her in the little cage so she's safe. And she's doing a brilliant job. She can just sit there while we do our manipulation. So there's no swarm cells, which is good. They're not swarming yet, but I think they will if I don't give them more space or do something. So we're gonna do some manipulations. Let me get some equipment out my van. So these are nuke boxes. This top one is one that I made this winter. I'm not very good at DIY, but I managed to put this together. And this one is one that I bought for I think 30 quid. Basically, it was more expensive to make them myself. Now that we know the queen is safe here, we can go through the hive and take out some frames and put them in these 2 nuke boxes. We're taking 2 splits from this. Each one needs a frame of food and a frame of brood. Got a frame of food, that goes in. Okay, that's a full frame of brood. That can go in here. So that is all good apart from one thing that it needs. It needs a queen. Now I'm going to do these 2 differently. I'm going to put a mated queen in one of them, and in the other one I'm going to let them raise a queen themselves. So this one needs also some eggs. There's plenty of eggs inside there. So that's that one made up. Now we need to do this one. It's going to be pretty much the same thing. A frame of food, a frame of brood, and this one isn't going to get any more because that's getting a queen straight away, and the queen will quickly, hopefully, lay eggs into the comb that is in there. So we're going to take the queen, put her there. Now we're not going to release the tabs on this. We're just going to introduce her slowly over the next week. So this hive we can now put back together. It's obviously missing a few frames now, but that's fine. We're going to replace that with these frames, which they will clean up. This is all drawn comb, which is really handy. So this hive, you can now see, they've got loads more space. There's one last thing I'm going to do before this is all over. First, I'm going to release the queen. Okay, so the queen is now out. This hive, we're going to move over there. Now all the bees that were living in this hive will know this as their entrance. So over some time, loads of bees will start flying back to here. Now a way that you can sort of slow swarming down is by separating the queen from the flying bees. So the queen is in that box, and all the flying bees, remember this is their home. So we will deplete that box of flying bees, and they will all come and live, hopefully, split between these boxes. Now what I'm going to do with this queen is pop her inside. You can actually hang the queen cage down. One more frame to go in here. Okay, that is the start of the splitting process. That one has a queen, which has been mated. That one hasn't, but I've given them a frame of eggs so that they can make a new queen. So that one, in how long does it take for a queen to emerge? 16 days. In 16 days, that one should have a queen hatch out. It will be a virgin queen, but then it will fly out and mate, and then come back to the hive, and hopefully it will be all good. This one here has the mated queen, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to wait a week, go back into the hive, check that they haven't built any other queen cells, because you can't have 2 queens. Break down the queen cells, open the tabs on the queen cage, and then let the queen free in there. The hive over there, which was looking pretty congested, now has a lot less brood in it and a lot less bees. All the flying bees are going to fly out of there, come back to these hives, split between the two. These two hives should build up really quick. We'll put them in full-size end, and then by the end of summer, we should have some extra really nice colonies that then next year we can get honey crop off. So it's such a long process, and you're really looking forward into the future when you're doing these manipulations. Anyway, I'm standing in the flight path. I'm gonna move out of the way. We're gonna check inside this hive now, the one that came out of the warrior hive. I finally managed to find the queen in this colony, and although she is viable, she is laying eggs, both worker and drone brood. She's laying so many drone brood and not many worker brood, which is a sign that she is slowly failing. So I think I'm going to replace her as well. Seems brutal, I know, but it is for the greater good. Tomorrow I'm going to add the second queen to the colony which we were requeening last week, and I'm going to finish off the requeening of this hive in a week's time. Gosh, so much going on, I don't even know if I can keep it all in my head. Busy day of beekeeping. I'm getting ready for more expansion. The aim by the end of this winter is to have all these hive stands full of bees. So 8 days ago we made this colony queenless, and today we are going to go in there and get rid of all the queen cells which they've made, because once they go queenless they want to make a new queen. But of course we don't want them to make their own queen, because we've got queen here in this cage. So we're going to open up this hive, get rid of all the queen cells, and then add the queen into the hive. And they might be a bit angry because they often do get a little bit more crazy when they don't have a queen in there to keep them sane. And so we've got to be really careful that we spot every single queen cell, because if they have any queen cells in here then it won't work introducing a new one. They'll just kill one of them. They've got a lot of food stored in here, which is good. And when there's loads of bees in it like this, it's hard to see them, but you can just give them a shake. And then by shaking it, you can see, and there's another one there. There's 2 frames of food, plenty of queen cells on there. So those 2 cells there, you can see, are very different from the worker brood. Worker brood, queen cells, much longer. Those are emergency cells, which the bees built in response to the queen disappearing. But we're going to get rid of them now. It's a little bit sad getting rid of them, but you simply can't requeen a colony if you have queen cells, because they will then have more than one queen, which isn't going to work. So we're going to go through this whole colony now, looking really carefully and getting rid of all the queen cells we find. These bees are actually really calm, which I'm surprised about. I thought without a queen they'd be a bit crazy. Check out those. They're proper long queen cells. And then we've got 3 more on this side. So I've removed all the queen cells from this colony here, and whilst looking through, there are so many frames of brood which will emerge in the next week or so. Basically, very soon that box is going to be stacked full of bees, which is really good if we want a honey crop. But I did say to myself that I want to expand the apiary this year, and that is sort of my preference over a large honey crop. And we could, that's big enough to split into 2 colonies like we did with the other one recently. However, I've only got 1 box on me currently, so I'm going to take a couple of frames out of this hive, put it in the new box. But I'm going to leave this one to get stronger, and then maybe we can then take another split from it later on. Because we're going to be moving this box away, lots of the bees will fly from here back to this entrance, so we want kind of a few more bees in this hive than we think that we need, because a lot of them will leave. That's the one. Oh yeah. That is all brood, and that's going to go in here. So this is a really small split. It's just a frame of brood which will hatch out, and then a frame of food to keep them going, and then around the brood area we've got these drawn combs. They're from last year. Actually, before I put any of those in, I'm going to shake some bees out of this. 2, 3. I think that should do. And then this colony we will give a queen next week. Luckily I've got a really good supplier, good bee dealer. Lid goes on. So we've got the new queen. I'm not going to pop the tabs open just yet. I'm going to leave it in there for a couple of days first. Whoa. Instantly they're getting very excited. Poking a stick through. You can use a cocktail stick for this. That's what I see most people use. And then over the next couple of days, the bees will hopefully get used to her being in there. And then we can pop the tabs open and then they can eat their way through. So this split, which came from the hive over there, lots of them will fly out and go back there. But what I'm going to do, to slow them down a bit, I'm going to stuff a load of grass in the entrance. Not too tightly, just enough so that it slows them down. I think I've heard that if you make their time getting out of there a little bit challenging and confuse them a bit, they are more likely to reorientate to this new space rather than going back to the old site. I'm going to put a big block on top of the hive so it doesn't go anywhere. The only thing I'm concerned about is sometimes there's horses in here, which did knock over one of my hives in the winter. So by putting a block on there, it's just nice and secure. Lovely, we just made a new colony. This will need a queen as soon as possible. Because this is queenless, and it has been for a week, we can add a queen whenever. And I'm actually going to go up and meet up with Lawrence from Black Mountain Honey next week. So we're gonna meet up with him, get a few more of his queens so we can requeen this hive. Nice, job done for the day. Cool. I'm gonna go and have a barbecue, I think. So it's 2 days after we put this queen cage in, and it's time to pop the tabs. You've got these 2 plastic tabs here which stop the bees from getting inside, like these bees. So we break that open and then it opens up to the fondant sugar. So now the bees in the hive can chew through there, and then the queen can escape out into the colony. And what we're going to do now is put this back in its place and leave it for 7 days. And then as soon as the queen has got out, she can start laying eggs. So we'll check in with this hive in about a week.
Now, when I first started beekeeping, I thought that it would be a simple case of getting a box of bees, and then once a year you get to go inside the hive, pull out the honey, and very little work was needed. But it turns out that if you want a consistent, successful honey harvest, you actually need to put in a little bit of effort. Now, the jobs of a beekeeper involve swarm control. This is basically trying to stop your bees from swarming. If they swarm, then you lose half your bees. So there's manipulations you can do within the hive to stop them from swarming. Regular inspections are needed of every hive to make sure that they are healthy, free of disease, and that they have enough food. At some times of the year when food is scarce, you need to make sure that you are feeding them to keep them going. Then in the winter, there's a lot of work with cleaning all the equipment. Every winter you want to sterilize everything and make sure everything is clean for the following year. Basically what I'm saying is there's way more to it than I initially thought. Now, one thing that I found really interesting over the past 3 years of keeping bees is that some bees are really calm and some bees are really angry. Obviously, beekeepers want to have calm bees. Calm bees means that they're easier to work with, they don't sting you as much, and it generally makes beekeeping a much more enjoyable experience. Now, over the past few years, I've got bees from various different sources. I've been given bees by fellow beekeepers. I have split up my hives from one hive into two and then lets the bees raise a new queen. I've also caught swarms from the trees. And one thing I've been experimenting with this year is getting hold of queen bees that a beekeeper, a bee farmer, has actually bred specifically to have good genetics that beekeepers want. Now, the breeding of bees is much like how farm animals and plants and pets are cultivated. It's called selective breeding. You get two parents that you like the traits of, you put them together, and then the offspring are hopefully more of what you wanted. However, with bees, it's slightly more tricky because of the mating process. Basically, the queen bee doesn't mate inside the hive with one of the male bees. The queen bee actually flies out and then mates with male bees in the local area. So it happens in the air, it happens away from where humans can get to. So it's actually quite hard for beekeepers when they're breeding bees to choose both parents. There are methods which humans have used, such as artificial insemination, basically where you insert the sperm into a queen bee. That way you know both parents. And another way is to do something called island mating. It's basically where you have a small island surrounded by water, you bring all the bees to that island that you want to mate with each other, and then obviously you know the whole population of that island is just the bees that you put there, and so they go out, mate, and you know both the parents. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, it's because recently I got my hands on a colony of bees which is so calm. And the reason I'm so excited about this is because I don't get stung. The bees don't sting. They've been bred to be so calm and so gentle. Anyway, in this video, we're going to go back in time a couple of weeks to a day where I drove into Wales and met up with two very experienced bee farmers. I learned loads about beekeeping, and I also got to take home my very own colony of bees, which are the best bees I've ever had.
You couldn't picture a more beautiful scene. You've got all this, I think, cow parsley, greater stitchwort, buttercups, many other things. I realised that the best thing about starting beekeeping was the places it has taken me to and the people I've met through it. The beekeeping is obviously interesting, but it's sort of a medium for doing all these other things and going to all these amazing places. It's like fishing, in that fishing is the excuse for going and sitting by a pond for a day and drinking beer. Hello. Oh yes, I have, yeah. Oh great, thank you. Well, that was Richard, one of the guys I'm meeting today. And we're going into a field. This is definitely the most beautiful apiary site I think I've ever seen. Richard has created something so nice here. Beehives everywhere, these really nice willow trees, a little stream that flows through, and then you've obviously got the hills surrounding the area. It's so nice. It really inspires me as well, coming to places like this.
My name is Lawrence Edwards, and I own a company called Black Mountain Honey with my wife Helen. I started beekeeping maybe like 10 or 11 years ago. Within about 4 or 5 years it had gone up to like 150 colonies. Way more than I ever knew what I was doing with, and it just grew completely out of control. But it started with that love for food and the love for honey.
As well as selling honey, Lawrence's business also sells colonies of bees and also queen bees with the help of longtime beekeeper Richard.
I've been an amateur beekeeper since I was about 14 with my father, and then I took some time out. Basically in life I realised I got made redundant quite a few times, and I thought I'd do something on my own. And so I've been a professional, if you want to call it that, for about 14 years.
And how many bee colonies are you looking after?
About 750
How much time do you spend looking after these bees?
every day, bar a Sunday.
So you take Sunday off?
Yeah.
That's good.
I think there's three real ways that you can start beekeeping. There's getting a nuke, which is buying like a box of bees like this on the frames already with the queen. The colony is effectively ready to go. A way that's very popular in America is a package. So what you get as a package is you get a big mesh box full of bees, about 3 pounds of bees, and then they give you a queen with it as well. But you don't get any frames. So it's kind of up to you to dump all of the bees into your hive, put the queen in and hope they stay put. And then the third and final way is to try and attract a swarm, or to go and collect a swarm, which is again just a big cluster of bees that should have a mated queen in it. The nuke is by far and away the simplest way of doing it, probably the most expensive way of doing it as well, but it means that you've got bees, you've got brood, you've got a queen, and they will stay put. So it's a pretty sound investment. So on this Payne's Poly nuke here, this is the nuke that gets sent out to all of our customers, whether they come and collect them or they get delivered. So when you buy them through the post, they come like that. And that's really important. There's mesh on the top, mesh on the bottom, and it helps bees keep cool throughout the postal service, or if they're being transited in cars. These bees here are very, very carefully selected and bred to be as calm as that there. So you can see I've got 3 bees up on the crown board, and I've lifted that up now, and not a single bee is coming up to even say hello. The way that a nucleus is generally set up, you have a brood cluster, which is where the queen lays all of her eggs and where all of the brood emerges, and then towards the outer sides you have your pollen, and then towards further outside of that you have your honey stores. So we will have a look inside here and we'll go through all of the different bits of the frames. And like when I think back to when I used to keep bees, and you know, I'd have my bee suit on and I'd have the smoker there, and even with my veil up I'd still be getting stung through the arm and just blitzed by the bees. And then you have these queens instead and these bees, and I just thought it makes beekeeping so much more pleasurable, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Right, so here we go, we found the queen. Beautiful red marked F1 Buckfast queen that's reared in the UK in this very apiary here by Richard, and you can see her there. Really nice big long abdomen, which the queen uses to go down and lay into the cells here. You can just see here that they're completely oblivious. The queen's wandering around, all she's interested in doing is laying eggs. And this is really what we go for, is super, super calm bees. I'm interested to know, like, in comparison to your bees, Alex, like, what are these different? Is this kind of, do your bees behave like this, or?
These are the calmest bees I've ever seen, for sure.
Cool.
Yeah, I would definitely have a few around the face.
Yeah.
Getting interested. My bees aren't stingy. They don't really sting. They're just
buzzy.
Definitely buzzy,
yeah,
and coming off the frames. No, these are incredibly chilled. I haven't seen a single one come off the frame.
No. Right, so I'm going to put that frame off with the queen over to one side, really, really carefully putting her back in, making sure none of the bees are crushed. Now you'll see on the next one here, you've got this brace comb in between, which is the way that the bees like to set up their nest. They connect everything up together. And it's at that point there where you get that little break, that's where they'll get you. If they want to come up, if they're angry, that would be the point. On both sides here, we've got a lovely frame of brood. And you'll see on here, I'll see if I can pick you out a couple of new bees, because you can kind of tell the difference. So, that one there, you see like the different colour of that bee there? Just a slightly lighter shade, a little bit more fluffy. Don't really know what's going on. So that bee there is maybe a day old, couple of days old. An interesting thing to note on here though, this is a great frame for showing you all the different things. So if I just move these bees out of the way here, that bit there, that's capped honey, so that's what the bees eat. This here is capped worker brood. So you get worker brood, which is the females in the colony, they do all the work. And then down here, that's capped drone brood. So that takes a little bit longer to emerge, 24 days. And they're the boys that go out and mate with the queens. And then in this corner over here, we've got pollen. So the bees will half fill those cells there with pollen, and that's the protein that they use to feed the young to ensure that the colony can kind of build up and thrive.
How do you go about transporting a beehive? How do I take this home?
It's something that we've worked on for quite a few years now, and there's no perfect formula for this. You basically have to get this in the box here back to your house, and you want to maintain as many of the bees that are in there as possible, but the worst thing that can happen is that the bees can overheat. So there's a lot of bees in there, there's a lot of brood in there, both of them give off huge amounts of heat, and unless you have some way to dissipate that heat, then the bees they'll just collapse and you just end up with a big box of dead bees, and believe me, it is pretty horrific. And then all we do, if Richard just passed me one of these over here, is that instead of putting this plastic crown board back on, all we do is we'll obviously put the other frame back in, make sure that there's no bees around the edge like this, and we just, they come back every time. You spend there most of the time just flicking bees off, and then all you do is you just pop that back on there. So if we were sending this in the post, we'd put a screw in each corner there, big 80mm screw with a big head to keep that lid firmly on. And then down at the front here, all we would do is just close that round to this kind of ventilated mesh side, and then place 2 screws over there. So it's completely sealed up at the front, completely sealed up at the top, but you've got this amazing ventilation both at the top and the bottom, which means that the bees can use it to kind of keep themselves cool. So if I'm sending these out in the post, what I do as well is I get like a big water sprayer, and just where Richard brings the nukes up to me, I give them a good spray of water, and you can hear it. It's like an air conditioning unit. You spray them and all of a sudden you just hear and it's the bees evaporating that water off to keep themselves nice and cool. And then before they go in the post, we give them a real good dousing of water again, and then that sees them through. If you're taking it back in a car, we always just recommend to people keep it as cool as you can. So air conditioning on, spray the bees, keep them nice and cool, water on the top, out of direct sunlight. As soon as they arrive with the customers the next day, we send emails out to people with a long list of instructions. But basically what you need to do is you take your nuke and you need to go and place it into its final position in the apiary where you want to keep it.
You're coming with me, you bees. It's like walking to work with a suitcase, but instead it's a bee case.
The box is in position. All we need to do now is transfer them out of this travel box into a full-size beehive. And luckily I have a beehive in my van, which is ready to go in this space. So we've got a brood box, which goes on top of here. And now all we're going to do is take all the frames out of this box and put them into this box here. Simple as that, really. Frame 3, 4, 5, and this frame has the queen on. She's going in. So we know the queen is in there now. I can just shake the rest of the bees in here. Put on a lid. And there we go, we've got a brand new beehive in the apiary. We're now up to 7 hives, so my aim is to go through this winter with 9 or 10. Stay tuned to see how that hive develops. It's going to be really interesting to see how large we can get it over the next few months of summer, and we might even get some honey from it too. I want to say a big thank you to Lawrence from Black Mountain Honey and Richard. It was great to hang out with them yesterday. I learned loads. If you're starting beekeeping and you want to get your hands on a box of bees like I did yesterday, then check out the links in the video description to see where you can get a box of bees from. Also, I'll leave a link to Lawrence's YouTube channel where you can learn everything you need to know about beekeeping. This year has been incredibly wet, and when it's raining, the bees don't like to go out and forage as much, so they can't collect the nectar, which in turn turns into honey. But over the past week or so, the weather has brightened up quite a bit. We've had many days over 20 degrees. There's so many clover flowers out at the moment, and also all the blackberry flowers are around, and those are some of the main sources of nectar for the bees at this time of year. So in just a second we're going to look through all the hives and see what's going on. I've got to check that all the queen bees are okay and laying eggs. I will also check for swarm cells. Fingers crossed we don't see any. So far we've managed to avoid any swarming. And also we'll be taking a peek inside the honey boxes to see if they're bringing in any fresh nectar. Right, let's get inside the beehives. Now my beekeeping inspections take quite a bit more of my time than they used to. Going through one hive is obviously pretty quick, but when you've got to do the same thing on 8 or so, yeah, it turns into a bit more of a job. So this hive, if I remember, is pretty small, but there should be a queen bee in there. Yeah, you see there's not many bees actually. All I want to see is that they're laying eggs and that there's a queen in there. I don't really need to see much else. Okay, so I see eggs. Let's see if we can find the queen as well. There's the queen. There she is. The green mark on her head means that she was born this year. And as you can see, she's laying eggs and there's brood, which will soon hatch. Now this colony is so small. It's on 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. It's not going to produce me a honey harvest, I'm pretty certain of that. And the aim for this colony over the next few months is to just expand it and get it through the winter. And on this outside frame, they're actually storing food, which is cool. There's a bit of weight to that, and that gives me confidence that they have got enough food in there. Right, I don't need to do anything else with that one. Now, because my memory is so bad, I've got this, my bee notebook. And what I'll do is I'll just note down things that I see, and then I can just have it for reference in the future. Oh wow, what? They have exploded. So this started as 2 frames back in, was it May? I think it was May. And now they've got no room. You can see they've been working super hard because there's wax comb being built in the feeder. They have completely run out of space in here. We need to put this inside a full-sized hive now. That is exciting. Oh, it's so heavy as well. They've got so much stuff in there. Gosh, it's so exciting when they actually start building so much new comb. Then we grab a brood box. So the difference in size between a brood box and a nuke box. Nuke is about 5 or 6 frames. Full-sized hive is 12 or 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This one has 12 frames. Now we know there's 6 frames in there, so we've got to take out 6 frames in this one. Stay calm. Whoa. This frame is jam-packed with brood and also honey. There's the queen. It's good to know that she's in there. Once you know the queen is in there, then you can sort of be a bit more quick with your movings of frames. And every single one of these frames is completely full with brood, which means when they hatch, there's going to be so many bees flying. I'm almost tempted to put a super on this hive. Oh wow, amazing. I can't believe the expansion. Like, that frame is just full of honey. Absolutely full. Now what I can do to make them draw out the comb quicker is I can move this frame over here and then pop this frame with nothing on it in between. Now moving frames around like that I don't think can be done all the time. If a colony is small or it's cold, you don't want to do that because then this one is isolated and then the brood on that frame may chill and die. And that happened to me on one of my other hives. I moved a frame too far away from the nest and it didn't work. But at this time of year, when the bees are really active, I think it can work okay. I'm going to do that on this side as well. It'll hopefully just speed up the drawing out of the frames. This is so exciting. So much going on. Now I'm hoping that there's enough bees in there and enough time left for them to collect loads more nectar. So I'm going to put this queen excluder on. And I've been putting supers on at a 90-degree angle. I was taught this by a beekeeper I met about a month ago. And it's interesting because I never thought they would draw out the combs if they were like laid out differently. But they in fact do, which is cool. And then on top we put the crown board. There we go. Full-sized hive. All set up. So this hive which I moved into the full-sized hive and this one here, they were both created at the same time. They were splits from one of my other hives. So it'll be interesting to compare and see what they're looking like. So this one is a little further ahead than that one. I moved this into a full-size hive a little bit earlier, and it's actually already got a super on it. So we're gonna see if they've actually filled it up at all. Oh, they're definitely working on the super. I think I only put this super on like a few days ago. Oh my goodness. This colony, which didn't even exist in the spring, has now got about 4 frames which are nearly full of nectar. And you see this white wax here, that's super fresh wax. It looks so clean and new. But that frame there is almost full. What we will do is have a quick look inside the brood box because we don't want them to swarm and we need to check. So that box has got some weight to it now. You see this colony isn't on many frames. Like this frame isn't being used. Oh wow. They're filling this with nectar though. Now it's not a very big colony, but they have built up so quickly from what they were. See there, all that fresh brood which will be born soon. I just don't want to see any swarm cells. Can you spot the queen? The green dot? She's been working just so hard, laying all those eggs. That is just what you want to see, a whole frame of brood. That means that the queen is laying so well and producing so many new bees that they should be so healthy and strong going through the winter. And that one's equally looking just as good. Oh man, it's all coming together. I made some colonies from splits and they've really worked out. And that frame there is just honey. Looking good. And we move on to the next. This little one here might need a full-size hive too. So this is a nuke box which I made myself this spring. And this little colony also came from one of my colonies that I started with this year. I made this one quite a bit later on in the year. Oh wow. Yeah, see they're also pretty full in there. I'm gonna do the same thing as I did with the other one. Get that into a bigger hive. Oh, it's so heavy. Goes. Frame full of bees which will be born soon. And on the other side we got the queen, the green queen that we got from Lawrence at Black Mountain Honey, full of eggs in there. Same thing again, That is just a perfect frame. Oh my goodness. So good. Oh, it's just looking amazing. I don't know whether to give this one a super. What's more important than honey for me though is building up the colony, so I think with this one I'm going to leave it. And all the supplies that they collect, so all the nectar and pollen will go into building this brood area as opposed to making me honey. Next year is when the real honey harvest is coming. Hopefully, that's what my plan is. So you see all these white flowers here, like that one, that is a white clover. And I heard from someone, somewhere, or I might have read it in a book, that almost all the UK's honey crop used to be from white clover. But obviously, white clover is like a meadow field plant. And as more and more of the meadows and fields are being used for other things, obviously the clover crop of honey is decreasing. But yeah, this clover is a member of the legume family. So it's quite closely related to peas, actually, like sweet peas or sugar snap peas. But they have loads of these little flowers, and when the conditions are right, they can produce quite a bit of nectar. I have been seeing quite a few of my bees on these flowers. And at the moment, this field out in front of the beehives is actually full of them. Over there are the beehives, and over here are the clover flowers. The other really valuable plant for honeybees right now are these brambles. Brambles are the plant which produce blackberry fruit. And it's always so amazing for me to see the multiple crops you get from the bramble. You get the flowers, and then the bees make honey from the nectar that it produces. And then afterwards you get these little beautiful black fruits that you can go and pick. And blackberries are so abundant in England. Like most hedgerows have them. Most gardens have them if the person looking after the garden isn't looking after it. They just grow naturally almost everywhere. But right now I think most beekeepers in this country are praying that the weather stays good. Because whilst these plants are flowering, we need the weather to be decent enough for the bees to actually leave the hive and forage. I was speaking to a local beekeeper actually about how showers in the summer are actually pretty good. Like if we get a little bit of rain, the plants can use that water and they can secrete more nectar, but not too much rain so that the bees can't actually forage. The ideal situation is that you get rain in the night and then sun in the day. So if you look carefully, you can see loads of little, almost stalks with little brown things on the end. Those brown things are anthers. The anther is like the male part of the flower. So that's where the bees will get their pollen from. And then in the center, you've got a load, it's very hard to see, but they will be the female part of the flower. Can't remember what it's called. Is it the stigma? So you've got one flower, but it's got both male and female parts. And if this flower gets pollinated, i.e. if the pollen goes onto the female part of the flower, then a fruit will be produced. Let's keep checking the beehives. Now we can check in what I think is the strongest colony that I have. And this is my original colony that I started with this year. So as you can see with this hive, I have 2 honey boxes already on there. We're gonna see how much of it they've filled up. It's always a good sight when you see bees bursting out the top. There aren't just some bees up there, there's quite a lot of them. We're gonna just lift one sample frame out the middle and see what's going on. Oh wow. They've done that in the space of a week. None of it is capped over yet, but it's heavy and it's pretty much full of honey. Oh, it's so good when the nectar starts coming in. It kind of makes you feel like it's all worth it. So this is an example of them starting to cap over the honey. You can see at the top here, the white cappings. They'll eventually do that to the whole frame. Honey is coming in though, and it's coming in fast. that second box. It's bursting with bees down here. It's ridiculous. Calm it, calm it. Oh, looking beautiful. Oh no, I think they might be thinking about swarming. Yeah, there's eggs in queen cells. Oh, there's another one under there. That is a sneaky queen cell. So we're just looking through this colony here, which is my strongest colony of them all. And we've got 2 honey boxes on this one, but we've just seen swarm cells. There's 2 of them there, really cleverly placed under. So if I don't do anything with this hive, they will swarm. I'll lose like half the bees. I'm gonna try something called a demarré split. Basically the aim is to split up the queen and the brood. So we're gonna do a bit of a manipulation here. Ah, that was a really bad sting right on the end of the thumb. Man, the fingertips and thumbs are the worst. Oh gosh, it feels like someone's sticking a sharp needle right in there. Okay, so we've got the queen in this cage. I'll place her just there. I've had a couple of stings now right on the fingertips and they're always so much worse. I've got to try and remember how to do this manipulation. First step is to take the old brood box and put it down. We then grab a new brood box. I'm lucky I had this with me because otherwise I wouldn't be able to do this. And I place it on top. So in this bottom box, we're going to add the queen and a frame. We're going to also add this frame. It's got a frame of eggs, and then the other side it's just open comb that the queen can lay eggs into. We're going to first make sure that there's no queen cells. And you guessed it, there is. So we're basically separating the queen from all the brood, and that will make them not swarm. I'm going to fill the rest of this box up with frames. There she is. So she can go down there and keep laying eggs. You see how basically we're just reducing the size of the colony, but we're not actually, because wait and see. On top of this, we're going to put the queen excluder. So the queen excluder means that the queen can't get up. And then we're going to put back on our honey boxes. Like so. And up here, we're going to put on that original brood box with all the brood. And you might be saying, well, you haven't made the colony smaller, you haven't divided them, they're all still in this pile. Now the gap here is enough so that these bees will act as a separate colony almost. These bees will think they're queenless, so I will destroy all the queen cells in here so that they only have one queen. All the baby bees which hatch in this bit will then go down to the bottom and live with the queen, and then they will just backfill this box with nectar. That's the plan. I don't know if it's actually going to work. So what we've got to do now is make sure there's no queen cells up here. So we're going to look through really carefully now, and that's going to be by shaking the frame and then just looking. But there are none on that frame. There is one here. So there were two here. That one had an egg in, and this one, you see the egg inside that cell? It's tiny, but that would have been turned into a new queen. So getting rid of that.
But I think I caught them early, like they were just thinking of swarming. And I'm gonna add another super just in case. Whoa there, this hive is massive now. It now has the brood box with the queen in, 2 supers, the brood box with all the brood in, but no queen. All the bees that hatch will then go down and be part of this colony. They will then backfill that with honey, hopefully. And then I put a extra super on just in case they need more space. It's a bit scary actually, don't want that to fall over. I need to come back in a few days and remove all the queen cells that they've created. If they create more queen cells in that box up there, because they have eggs up there, I'll need to come back and remove them. Checking through all the colonies doesn't take that long, but when you have to do a manipulation like in this hive just here, it suddenly doubles the length of time you spend. We're getting through them though, we've only got 2 more to do. This is also a split that I took from one of my original hives, which is actually also doing incredibly well. This colony was just 2 frames not that long ago. Lovely fresh wax being drawn out. There's the beautiful buckfast queen. They all seem to have kind of lightish coloured, gingery coloured bodies, and then at the end it's like a dark tip. But she's doing her job well. It's looking so good. Absolutely beautiful. You see, it was only the colony which was really quite large, which was planning on swarming. All the others seem to be not swarmy at all. We're gonna add a super. Well, we'll see what that does. And lastly, we're going to look inside the colony which I picked up from Lawrence at Black Mountain Honey just about a month ago. I put a honey super on this hive just a few days ago, and they're already working on it. Oh wow, they've nearly fully filled up this frame. Oh wow. Look at that capped honey at the top there. That is so beautiful. And look at that for a frame of brood. Everything's looking really good in this hive. And the bees in this one are just unbelievably calm. And that is today's bee inspection done. I'll be back here in a few days to sort out the hive which we did the manipulation on, and also to keep an eye on whether the nectar is still coming in. I hope it just continues and continues. The longer the nectar flow lasts, the more honey we get. Honey is a 100% natural food product that bees produce from nectar in flowers. I love everything about it. Its smell, texture, taste, how it looks, and that's why I became a beekeeper 3 years ago. My name is Alex, and this is going to be my 3rd honey harvest. On year 1, we had 12 kilograms of honey. On year 2, we had a much better harvest of 68 kilograms. And soon we're going to find out how much we got this year. It's currently the 1st of August, and over the past month, the bees have been storing away loads of honey in the top boxes of the hives. My plan is to harvest it soon, but I'm just checking to see whether it's ripe. When I say ripe, I mean it being at the correct moisture content. Below 20% water content is the aim, as at this level the honey won't ferment and spoil. In fact, it will pretty much last forever. As you can see here, some of the frames have a white layer of wax over the top. The bees seal the honey over with this wax when it's at the right moisture level. So when you see this white capping over the top, you know it's ready to harvest. If the frame isn't capped over with wax, you can shake the frame upside down a few times. If the honey doesn't spray out, it's also a sign that it's ready. One box in particular was looking really good and felt pretty heavy, meaning it was full of honey. A few days later, I returned to put escape boards on the hives. Basically, it's a one-way system that gets bees out of the honey boxes and makes it easier to take the honey off the hives.
This is the escape board we're going to use. I've got this device, which bees can go through one way and not get back through the other. That goes in this hole. And then the other hole has got a different type of one-way system. Apparently these are much better. So we're gonna use both of them.
Two days later, I returned again to take the honey. However, when I checked in one of the boxes, I was pretty devastated to find that all the honey was gone. In total, I estimated about 30 kilograms of honey to disappear in a couple of days. How on earth did that happen? Well, it's all down to a couple of small gaps in the hive roof that I didn't know about. Bees from other colonies somehow found the honey, and because the boxes were empty of bees due to using the bee escape boards, there were no guard bees to protect the honey, and so it was easily robbed. Over a month's worth of nectar my bees had collected had gone in a matter of days. Luckily, not all my hive roofs had holes in, and I did still manage to take a number of boxes of honey off the hives. With the help of a mini battery-powered blower, I could blow any remaining bees off the frames before putting them in my van. You have to be pretty quick with this, otherwise the frame of honey quickly becomes covered with bees again. At this time of year, bees and wasps find honey so quickly.
So I put the honey boxes in the van, and there was obviously quite a lot of bees still in there. Let them all free. That would have been a nightmare car drive. Absolute nightmare. This is not going to be the most enjoyable journey home. Just as long as you don't sting me. They shouldn't, because they should be full of honey. Back in the kitchen with all the honey boxes, the drive home was pretty hectic. I had bees all over the car, flying around me. I tried my best to stay calm. We've got more boxes to extract than last year, but they're just not full. So I think there's going to be actually a lot less honey than last year. So I've got the kitchen set up in a way which I think should make the whole extracting process pretty smooth. All the full boxes of honey are there. I say full, but this is the average frame. Not looking that great. There's honey in all of this section here, which is slightly darker, but not much of it is capped over, and it's not like full to the brim. Anyway, once the frame is taken out of a box, we put it over here, cut the wax cappings off on both sides. Now this is a pretty neat little box thing which I made recently. You can buy these for like 150 quid. So I thought I'd try and make one for about 25, 30 pounds. 2 buckets. First bucket I've put a hole in and just cut down like a drying cake rack thing. And then in there, it's just a normal bucket with a honey gate. And that's basically because here is where you cut the wax off the frames. The wax will sit on top and it will do like a minor filter. It won't filter it as much as it will down there, because that's the filter for when we can then bottle it and jar it. But this will just filter out all the big bits of wax. So then the honey drops through into the bottom, and then I can pour the honey in the bottom bucket into that filter. Then I can fill my 3-frame manual extractor up. I'll then spin the honey out. It will go through this honey gate at the bottom, through a sieve. It will filter out all the wax. Then the honey will drip into the bucket, and then I can close that bucket up and then bottle, jar up the honey at a later date. Right, let's get to work. First frame uncapped.
Once you've put 3 frames in the extractor, you can start the first spin. But once all the honey is spun out from one side, you have to turn the frame around and then spin again.
And that frame doesn't weigh anything anymore.
It's such an incredible machine. Well, we've got at least a jar of honey, I can see that much. This is what it's meant to look like. Hopefully we're going to see more and more frames like this. Every frame of honey is slightly different. Frames which have a large wax layer are easily cut off with a serrated knife, and the bits which the knife doesn't cut off are finished with an uncapping fork. Some frames don't have any wax cappings on at all. These are really easy, you just pop them in the extractor and away you go. Yeah, these are the best frames I managed to get. They're pretty much full and capped over, but still not like last year's. My one box that I did have, which was totally full, got all eaten, so I'm pretty sad about that. But these are the second best frames. Not bad. More honey. As you can see at the bottom, there's a puddle of honey, and I can't spin any more out until I have emptied it into the bucket. So here goes. Whoa, hey. Now that lot to go. This is really delicious. It's mild, it's not strong flavoured honey. It's just so, it's like caramel. In my personal opinion, probably a little bit biased, but the honey you get from like the summer English honey is so, the flavours are so even. They're not like super strong, they're not super sour, they're just so nicely rounded. I think it's probably because the bees collect the nectar from a wide variety of flowers, and when you combine them all it sort of levels out and is quite neutral. I tried some ivy honey the other day, which was super interesting flavours, almost tasted like medicine. And then you've got horse chestnut honey, which has a interesting flavour, but this is just so nicely rounded, and it's definitely my favourite type of honey that I've tried, which is good because it's the stuff which my bees go out and make in the summer. This is a refractometer, and I can see the moisture content of the honey using this. It needs to be below 20%. 19%. If it's higher than 20%, there's a chance that it can ferment, and you can't legally sell it as honey, I don't think. This honey is good. I can sell it, I can eat it. It will last probably forever. Well, it's going to be interesting to see how much weight of honey we got. 23 kilos of honey. Could have been more like 50, I reckon, if I hadn't messed up big time. But seeing as at times of this year I thought I wasn't going to get any honey harvest, 23 kilos is actually a nice surprise. I've got to remember that my expectations were at first a lot lower than that. It was only when I saw all the honey on the hive like a few days ago that I knew there was more than that. So not all bad, not all good. Learnt some lessons. There's a couple of jobs to do now, filling all the jars of honey and then rendering down the wax and making candles. I got my bucket of honey, 23 kilograms, actually maybe a little bit less because of the weight of the bucket. I've then got a weighing scale because I need to fill the jars at least 227 grams, which is 8 ounces. It can't be less than that. It can be a bit more, that doesn't matter. You're giving the consumer a little bit more than they paid for, but it just can't be less. These jars have been cleaned and then I put them in the oven, which sterilised them and also dried them out. It's quite hard to dry a jar like this. You don't want to put a hand towel inside and wipe it because then the hand towel can leave stuff on the inside of the jar. It's basically a simple case of taking a jar, putting it under the honey gate, filling it up, testing it on the weighing scale, putting the lid on and then putting it to the side. That is one I did earlier. Nothing better than seeing the final jar of honey
That's just straight from the beehives, made by the bees over the past month or two. If my estimates are correct, we should be able to fill up about 100 jars.
Once the jars of honey were filled, it was time to deal with the wax. I needed to filter and clean this dirty wax so it could be used in candles. The first phase involved adding some water to a large pot and putting the wax on top. The water keeps the wax from getting too hot and burning. This was then put over a flame and boiled until all the wax had melted. As it melted, I could fit more and more wax into the pot. I used a sieve to scoop out all the dirt before turning off the heat and letting it cool down.
There's loads of bees that have found some dropped honey. And in here, it looks a whole lot different. From the first round of cleaning, we've got this block of beeswax. From all that raw wax, you just expect to get way more than this. I gave the saucepan a little rinse and clean. Added some more water. We're gonna place this back in. Basically, there always needs to be water in there. Otherwise, the wax can burn.
Once it had melted again, I poured it through some cheesecloth to filter out all the tiny pieces of dirt. I found that pillow covers also work for this, as well as socks or shirts. Basically anything with a fine mesh will work.
So after giving away quite a lot of my jars of honey to friends and family, I have about 80 jars that I can sell. Now what I want to do is sell every jar of honey with a candle as well. My bees produced this year maybe 25 kilograms of honey, and for that amount of honey, this is the total amount of wax. After melting it down, as you can see, there's not much. Probably 900 grams, I would have thought. It's so beautiful though. This stuff has been filtered down, and all I need to do is melt this and then I can turn it into candles. But if I want to sell every jar of honey with some candles, that's not enough wax. So I managed to buy in a load more wax. And if you want to make candles, you can. You can buy wax from beekeepers all across the UK. I got this stuff from Gwyn and Griffith in Wales. There's one piece. So this stuff we're going to melt down with my own beeswax. And I actually have some wax left over from last year as well, which we're going to melt down. And then we're going to do some candle dipping. What is candle dipping? It's as simple as it sounds. You take a bit of cotton wick, you dunk this into some molten wax, let it solidify, and then do it again a load of times until the wax has thickened around each wick, and then you'll have two candles. You cut it at the top and then it separates the two different candles. I did this last year on a very small scale and I produced some nice candles. This year I've got to make obviously 80 pairs of candles. So I bought this little device. It's basically a hook at the top to hang it, to let it dry, and then a load of little hooks which I have threaded cotton wick around. So I can do 1, 2, 3, I can do 4 candles at a time. I dunk this into my pot of wax, lift it out, let it rest on my wooden rig that I made, and then take it off, dunk it again, put it back, and basically just repeat that until the candles are about 1 inch thick. I'll show you the whole process in the kitchen in a second. I've decided to do it in my bedroom rather than in the kitchen, just because I'm pretty sure it will cause some mess and I don't want my housemates to have to deal with that mess. This is the same boiler that I use for making beer. And then we can put this container inside the water. And that means that the wax, which is inside here, will heat up slowly, because you can't let wax get too hot. So that goes in here. The boiler's been going about half an hour, and as the wax in there is melting, I've been pushing it down and then loading more wax on top. Once that is full and all of it is melted through, I can then start the dipping process. Yeah, I would recommend doing this in a kitchen. All my windows are steamed up. It's really foggy in here. It's day 2 of candle making. Yesterday I realised how long it takes to heat up and melt the wax in that thick metal tube. Basically, I heated it up, melted all the wax. By the time it had melted, I had some other stuff I had to do, so I had to leave the house and go out. So I turned off the heating element and I got back and it had all solidified again. So I realised I basically need a whole day to do candle making. So I have time to heat it up to the right temperature and dip the candles. So the boiler's on, the wax is slowly melting, and hopefully today we're actually going to do some candle dipping. I realised I needed to move everything into the kitchen where there was better ventilation, as my bedroom now felt like a sauna. In the kitchen, I also had space to set up my smaller candle dipping rig too. So this is the slightly smaller scale setup we've got. It's exactly the same principle though. We've got a container heating up water, and then the water is heating up the wax. And then here I've got a slightly different drying setup. Got these pieces of wood, the wicks will lay across those, and then I'll give it a dunk and then leave it on here to cool down and solidify. I've got 3 of these pieces of wood, so I can interchange 3 at a time, so I can basically be making 6 candles at a time. Now that was way quicker. Look how quick that's melted. I've rigged up the strings with little weights to give it some tension, and soon we'll be able to get dipping. Once everything was set up and running smoothly, it turned out to be quite a therapeutic way to spend the day. I could listen to my favourite music, dip candles and relax. And I basically just keep dipping and drying and dipping and drying until the candles are, I'm going to try and make them about 1 inch wide. I think that's a nice width for the candles to be. So 2.5 centimeters. And there we go. It took me an hour or more to get these candles dipped. I can't remember how many actual dips I had to do. But we've got these candles which are just under 1 inch in diameter. And they're the first dipped candles of the year. Wax is just the coolest material in the world. So these will be going inside boxes with the honey. It looks like I can't make these candles any wider, because otherwise they would be touching each other. The wax is still pretty soft, it cut through. Look at that. Once all the candles were cut off and hanging to dry, I rigged it up again and repeated the process. It's 5 o'clock now, so my housemates are probably going to start coming back from work, so I'm going to finish up the current batch of candles and then resume maybe tomorrow or another day. Good day though. As well as the dipped candles, I also made some in a few spare honey jars and also silicone moulds. This ended up being a much less time-consuming way of making candles, as all I had to do was pour the molten wax into the mould and then wait. I could get on with other things, whereas the candle dipping, you have to constantly be there dipping the candles. Beeswax for me is definitely the most interesting material to work with. It can be moulded into pretty much any shape you like, and the way that you can turn it from a solid to a liquid and back to solid again means that
you can never really make mistakes. You can always reverse your wax back into a liquid and then form it into whatever shape you like. It was now time to start assembling the finished product. I wanted to create a little gift box, which included a jar of honey and a pair of candles. Some legal requirements included putting a best before date on the base of every jar, and also a little swing tag label. Just like last year, a couple of friends kindly helped me with the label. This is definitely my weak point. I'm not much of a artistic person, but luckily I have a friend who's really good at this sort of thing. Last year she painted a beautiful blackberry flower for the label, and this year a clover. Clover is what I believe the bees to have foraged most of the honey from. There were loads of these flowers around the beehives. I got some free smiley stickers. Every set of candles and honey will go inside a nice little box. And when you buy packaging boxes, you get them as nets. You might remember learning about nets in maths lessons at school. Basically, this turns into a box like this. So now I've got to make up a load of boxes that I can then package everything into. That's the first one done. That's all the boxes. I'm so nearly there with getting the honey and candles ready to sell. I have just taken some pictures on my camera and I'm just going to process the photos of the products. Reminds me of my old job where I used to make product videos and take product pictures. They're not the most professional product pictures. I don't really have a proper studio to shoot in, so I've been doing some in the kitchen, some just on the floor in the living room, some in my bedroom. And now that the pictures are done, I'm going to put a post on Instagram, basically putting the products up for sale. It's all coming together. Okay, so we've got all the boxes. These are empty currently. And then I've got all the jars of honey. I still need to put labels on the jar of honey, and I'm going to do this by tying a bit of raffia string onto the top of the jar. I've got a shoebox full of dipped candles. I've got a load more in my bedroom as well, once I run out. And we're going to make up a load of these boxes. But what I'm going to do is, while I'm receiving messages on my phone, because my phone is going nuts, I'm getting so many messages of people wanting honey, if they are asking for something extra, like they want an extra jar of honey or an extra pair of candles, I will be able to make that up as I go along. I think in about 5 minutes I have already sold out of all my stuff. Okay, so well, 10 hours later, and I've made quite a mess with all the straw packaging. But I've got about 50 boxes over there ready to send out. All the honey sold out pretty quick. I've still got a few candles which I'm going to try and sell, and I'm also going to try and make some more of these mold ones. I might even buy some other molds and use the rest of my wax, making some other interesting shaped candles. But yeah, that was a long day. It was quite repetitive, but also really nice, getting loads of messages from people who have seen my videos over the years and wanted to get their hands on some of the honey. It's a good feeling finally having the product ready to sell after a whole year of beekeeping. My job on Saturday will be annoying the post office with all my parcels. I'm going to bring all my parcels to them and get them sent out across the UK. Looking back over the past year, I'm quite proud of myself actually. At the end of 2023, I moved house with my bees to a new part of England. I managed to expand my apiary over the year from 2 hives up to 9, and I even managed a small honey harvest, which is now being consumed by people across the UK. As another season of beekeeping comes to a close, I'm already preparing for next year, where my aim will be to produce a much larger honey harvest. Fingers crossed the bees stay safe and survive the winter. In the meantime, I think I'm gonna go on vacation somewhere in the mountains this winter and do some skiing. See you soon.